morning, everyone. I'm Angela Trambitas. I'm the membership manager with the Gresham Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you to our presenting sponsors, Columbia Bank, the Boeing Company, and Portland General Electric. Thank you to our stakeholder sponsor, Gresham Barlow School District, and also MetroEast Community Media, who is our media sponsor. Thank you to our amazing partners. We are recording the webinar today, and it will be available through the cable channels for the MetroEast Community Media, as well as the Chamber website. We want to thank the Oregon Department of Transportation for being so responsive to our request for getting some speakers on our topic today, which is toll roads. Do we have toll roads in Oregon? The answer is no, but that will change. Today, we will hear from 3 experts on the ground about what is happening, when, where, and perhaps why. In 2017, the legislature passed a bill that allowed for the possibility of toll roads. Last session, they took the next step. For many of us, toll roads mean money to pay for highway improvements. However, Governor Brown has been quoted as saying, using toll money to widen roads is like having a carbon tax to build a new coal plant. Will roads be widened? What does the toll money pay for? Will the toll roads, where will the toll roads be? Is it freeway expansion or congestion management? Jot down your questions in the Q&A and also the chat box, and we will pass those along to our speakers today. Today, our speakers are going to share their expertise to inform us what is happening with the toll roads in the Portland area. Today, we are pleased to have the Oregon Toll Program Director, Lucinda Broussard, Urban Mobility Office Director, and Megan Channell, the Rose Quarter Project Director. Thank you for being with us today. And the program is yours.
Well, thank you. I'll start things off. Appreciate that. Was a very good introduction and much appreciated. We're very happy to be here. We'll be running through a brief slide deck here and then getting to questions, as you heard, so get those ready. I'll start off and I'll be turning it over to my colleagues here. But I'll first start with setting a little context, and I'm going to be sharing my screen here as I'll be running the slideshow. And let's see if I can get us into presentation mode. There we have it. Looking good. Can I get a thumbs up, Megan, Lucinda? Yep. They know this is not usually my area, but we'll get through it. Again, by way of introduction, very quickly, I'm Brendan Finn. I'm the director of ODOT's Urban Mobility Office. I'm joined by Toll Program Director Lucinda Broussard and Megan Channell, who is the director of one of our largest projects, the Rose Quarter Improvement Project. And we'll get into more detail on that to start off. So you heard a little bit about this. I want to do a little table setting as far as how we got to where we are here today. And I'm actually going to go back to 2015. When the governor, business leaders, and legislators traveled around the state of Oregon in anticipation of creating a transportation package to bring forward in the 2017 session. They went across the state. They went to Ontario. They went to Grants Pass. They were in Burns. They were in Pendleton. They were in Gresham. They went all over the place to find out what's the biggest transportation need that's facing the state of Oregon. And loud and clear, the problem was congestion in the Portland metropolitan region. Oregon's a net export state. We rely on getting our products in, but more importantly, getting our products out. As it makes many of our communities thrive. As I said, from Ontario, from onion growers to Ontario to loggers and Grants Pass, the congestion in the Portland metro region is paramount to our biggest transportation challenge in the state. So House Bill 2017 created a set of tools and funded a set of projects to deal with that issue. And we're going to go into this new approach that again was solidified a bit just in this past session through House Bill 3055. And the philosophy that the Oregon Transportation Commission and the legislature have endorsed is we have to do things differently. This approach that we've taken for the past 75 years of a project here, a project there, moving one bottleneck to the next area isn't working. It's just pushing congestion around, which is holding back our economy, and it's creating equity issues, and it's also contributing to climate change. So do things differently. So that's our charge as at the Urban Mobility Office, and I'll talk a little bit about how the toll program fits into that before turning it over to Megan and then Lucinda to talk about how our projects and the toll program fit together there. So the Urban Mobility Office was created in 2020, and our charge was to deal with some of these issues that I just talked about. And these are some of our values that relate to some of our outcomes: equity and inclusion. How do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to climate change? Create a system that you can rely on, and reduce congestion. We need to fund this system for these enhancements. We need to also keep our system resilient through a major earthquake and also safe, which is, again, one of the number ones on our list to create a system that's safe for everyone. So I threw this slide in here just a few minutes ago because I thought it would be important for this group to see, and I actually need to move my, there we go. Sorry, I was blocked for the Gresham and Troutdale part. So this graph is and map is an interesting one. Those percentages you see, that's the amount of trucks that are using that roadway at a period of time, and obviously the number of those in compared to single occupancy vehicles. You can see a lot is really moving out from Gresham and Troutdale out the 84. But again, look down into the Rose Quarter portion. You got about 1 in 10 cars there, or trucks, vehicles that are heading through that corridor. So congestion there is a major issue. It's the 28th worst freight bottleneck in the country. And then, as you can see, the interstate bridge and that replacement project is also another key point. So one of the things that we talk about is dealing with this as a system. We don't just look at one area or another and push the bottlenecks around. We need to make these right-size the system through these important projects that enhance the active transportation and public transportation, but also the seismic vulnerabilities we have, especially on 205 and also the interstate bridge, how we manage congestion, and how we use the toll program to do that as well, and then fund these very important projects. But we have to look at it as a system. We can't look at it as we need to fix something here and fix something there. The entire system needs to be fixed. Now, one thing I want to point out is through House Bill 2017, it did give statutory authority to the Oregon Department of Transportation to toll 2 corridors. One of them is I-5, and that's from, as Lucinda says, we call it river to river, from the Willamette River in Wilsonville up into North Portland to the Columbia River, and then the entire corridor in Oregon for I-205. So those are the 2 systems we're looking at. We have 2 projects going on. One's a little farther along, and that's that green section there of I-205. That will be related to the improvements that will be happening there. The first one is replacing the Abernathy Bridge and the adjacent interchanges there at Westland and Oregon City. That will be coming on first. We'll see a little bit more about the schedule there in a little while. And then we're looking at the regional mobility pricing project, which is looking at those entire corridors. And I won't steal any thunder from Lucinda because she's the expert, and we'll go into that a little bit more. So with that, one of our big projects that takes, as you know, a huge bottleneck in our system that contributes to climate change, that has all kinds of equity issues, is the importance of the Rose Quarter Improvement Project, which was kind of a cornerstone project of House Bill 2017. Lots of news and always excitement around this project. And we have a very capable leader on that, Megan Channell. I'm going to turn it over to her to talk about where that project is right now. And I'll come back at the end and look forward to hearing any questions, comments from the group here. So Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brendan, and good morning and almost afternoon. Wonderful to be here. Again, I'm Megan Channell, Project Director for the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project. I'm going to just share a quick overview of what the project is, a recent milestone that we've reached in terms of the project design, and then touch on just overall project schedule and where we're going. So first and foremost, what is the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project? You can see that on the screen here. There are a number of different elements that relate to the I-5 corridor, namely the addition of auxiliary lanes and shoulders connecting I-84 to the south and then I-405 to the north, really to improve the safety, the traffic flow operations on I-5. With the auxiliary lanes that connect one entrance ramp to the next exit ramp, along with the full shoulders. So in this area where there are very limited shoulders today, full shoulders would be added to give space for drivers or disabled vehicles to move out of the way of traffic if an incident is happening, or emergency responders to use that space to get to an incident within or beyond the Rose Quarter. And we're also exploring opportunity for bus on shoulder in some locations as well to help with transit improvements through this area. Along with the I-5 improvements, we have a number of improvements kind of on top on the local system. In this graphic here, highlighted as number 1, you can see highway covers. So think of that as a cap, a land bridge crossing over I-5 that creates new community space on top of I-5, as well as reconnecting the grid of the local streets across I-5 in this area. I'll get to more of detail on the highway cover in just a second. But with that, we also have new community connections and crossings over I-5 with new roadway connection we refer to as the Hancock crossing that's shown in blue on the top end of the screen, as well as green loop connection and supporting the city's multimodal central city connection on the Broadway and Weidler corridors shown in purple, as well as other multimodal local street improvements through the area. We're also making some improvements to the ramp locations. And so there are some relocation specifically of the I-5 southbound off ramp, which you can see in kind of that reddish brown color. So a lot of exciting elements to not only address transportation infrastructure, but linking in that community building and community connection component into our project. So next slide. I want to highlight the highway covers because we've reached a recent milestone. Just on September 9th, the Oregon Transportation Commission did provide direction for the sort of design of the highway covers for us to continue to do some technical analysis, additional design work, and environmental review of a new design. And this came out of a year-long process with an independent highway cover assessment process that we worked with our partners from specifically from Metro, TriMet, Portland Public Schools over the past year, and really came out as a request from those entities, as well as the City of Portland and Albina Vision Trust, to take a deeper look at what potential we could have with the highway covers in enhancing community development opportunities. And so through that process, there were a number of design scenarios that were evaluated, and ultimately what was termed as Hybrid 3 was the ultimate cover concept that we are advancing for further evaluation. And so Hybrid 3 meets a lot of the areas that we've heard from the community in terms of priorities. So first and foremost is maximizing developable land on top of the highway covers. So the highway covers are longer and stronger to be able to accommodate 2 to 3 story buildings on top. We're also looking at the option of what it would take to have 5 to 6 stories. Another priority that we heard from the community was around keeping the project on schedule, and with that, keeping the jobs that we have programmed to deliver and build the project on schedule. And so with this concept, we are able to keep the project on schedule, keep our construction timeline starting in 2023 for the goal of maximizing our disadvantaged business enterprise program and our workforce program and the creation of jobs. And so Hybrid 3, again, keeps us on schedule, maximizes developable land, but also incorporates some additional improvements related to restoring community connections, restoring a street grid over I-5 in this area, as well as improving the walkability and vibrant community, people-friendly space on top of I-5. So we're excited to be kicking off the evaluation of Hybrid 3 moving forward. And speaking of moving forward on the next slide, just in terms of project milestones, as many of you may know, this has been a project that has been decades in the making, but we are at a critical point where we are in the midst of our project design phase. We're at about a 20% design phase right now, and are looking to begin construction in 2023 as we sort of over the next year and a half shift from design into construction. We did have an approved environmental document completed at the end of 2020 that we'll be coordinating with FHWA as it relates to building in Hybrid 3 as part of the project. So we'll be doing that over the next year. And again, focused on early work package construction on the north and south ends of the project area starting in 2023, all the while focused on our community engagement approach as well. We have a number of committees, specifically the Historic Albina Advisory Committee that is really taking the charge of working with our design team and providing recommendations on how we move forward, as well as our Community Oversight Advisory Committee that is focused on our disadvantaged business enterprise and workforce program, holding us accountable as we move forward. And I'll note that we did just have our final meeting of our executive steering committee just last month. And so the Historic Albina Advisory Committee, or board rather, is picking up the mantle of the executive steering committee to lead the charge on the design work. So with that, I will just also note that we hear from stakeholders around the importance of the toll program, and just want to note that tolls will be operational prior to the completion of the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project. So with that, Lucinda, I will turn it over to you.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Megan, and thank you for inviting us. My name is Lucinda Broussard. I'm the Toll Program Director. I'm just going to go through what projects we have right now going on and then what tolling looks like. So this first one you see is the Regional Mobility Pricing Project. Brendan mentioned this previously, and that's really river to river tolling from, thank you, from Boone Bridge all the way up to the Interstate Bridge and then all of I-205. So this is our Regional Mobility Pricing Project. It is a congestion management project. It's one of the first of its kind in the nation to try to do what we're doing, which is tolling all lanes in both directions. And it's really, we are trying to do that demand management, congestion management. It has to be done as a system. So this is what that whole system would look like in the end. That darker piece is the I-205, which is a 7-mile stretch. Brendan talked about that too. The first project on there is the Abernathy Bridge that will be coming up soon. We have the same 5 pillars that he talked about: equity, climate change, reliable. It's a reliable trip, but also we're looking at reliable funding sources so we can pay for these improvements, like I-205 improvements get paid for with tolls. And then of course, safety. Next slide, please. And then the I-205 project, I just mentioned that a little bit more. So it's OR 213 to Stafford Road, and it's that light blue. This is the first piece of that whole program, that regional mobility pricing program that we're bringing up. The first piece is this I-205, and then it would be a complete system. Next slide, please. So I know you've heard about tolls and tolling and congestion pricing, called many different things. Really, tolls is the umbrella, as I call it. It's a user fee. You pay for what you use. And then congestion pricing is an application under that. Next slide, please. And the next slide. I always talk about how will it work. It's all electronic. I'm sorry, Brendan. Can you go back one? Thanks. It's all electronic, which means there's no stopping. There's no baskets out there. There's no people taking your money. There's no coin, drops. This is all electronic. You'll either have a small device in your vehicle called a transponder or a tag or a pass. It's called many different things, but it actually is just read on the road, or will capture your license plate if you do not have that. Next slide, please. And then when we talk about toll rates, toll rates are kind of the big thing, but toll rates do the 2 things that we're trying to do, which is manage congestion and generate revenue. we won't have this information until we're further into the project. So after it's all done and we're ready to start going live, the OTC, Oregon Transportation Commission, will start determining toll rates, and they'll be determined by, how much it costs to do this work, because we have to pay for the work that we're doing, how much congestion we can manage, and how much revenue we can generate. There's we call this like a sweet spot. So the toll rate's not known today, but when we do get to that toll rate, that's what we'll be looking for. We'll be looking for this balance of manage congestion and generate revenue. Next slide, please. How much will it cost? We're doing variable rate pricing, and that's what does that congestion management. So it costs more when there's more traffic. So think about during congestion times, or we call those peak hours, the price would be higher. And during the times when there's not as much congestion, the price would be lower. So we'll have a toll rate that covers both the high and the low. Next slide, please. What's the benefits? We talked about all these things we need to do. And I always say, we have a whole lot more wishes than we have money for, and we want to be innovative. We want to get past just doing maintenance and get on to doing more of the innovative things. So how do we modernize a system? And how do we it's like we're modernizing it. Why? Improve travel times, reduce greenhouse gases. If you're moving, it's that ideal of if you're moving. Right now, congestion is causing some of those CO2s, but if you're moving, that flattens out. We do not eradicate it, but we can help reduce. Funding, again, to do other investments. And then, of course, investments to advance equity, which I'll talk a little bit about what our Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee is working on. Next slide, please. So how does that impact? It's got to impact more than just what we're trying to do. What are our ripple effects, I call them? UMO projects, as Megan was discussing, we have a lot of packages that go out. We want to make sure that we're getting people to work. We're advancing that. And so support job generation is definitely one of them. And we keep talking about trip reliability, and that's reliability for freight also, not just for people, but also for freight. And how does that, and that impacts how much we pay for stuff, right? The longer you're spending on the road, the more gas you're spending to do that, the price goes up. And we feel that as consumers. So this actually helps business and it helps the consumer. Next slide, please. What will it pay for? We talked about those core projects. We talked about Rose Quarter. We talked about I-205 improvements. None of those work without tolls. We need the tolls to pay for that. There's no money for that. Transit and multimodal, which I'm going to connect to our affordable, I'm going to connect to our equity group. They'll be looking at that, and they are looking at that. Neighborhood health and safety, that one's kind of odd. People always go, what does that really mean? We're talking about diversion. Anytime there's rerouting for reasons of getting off the highway to avoid congestion, those are things we're looking at, help mitigating. And then, of course, affordable options for people experiencing low income. Under House Bill 3055, there is a clause in there to look at this. Our Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee was looking at this too. So actually, this is going to come together really well. Next slide. When will it start? So here's our timeline. Right now, we're in an environmental review process for the I-205. We believe we could start tolls the earliest end of 24, early 25. The Regional Mobility Pricing Project has a longer, we're in a PEL or a preliminary environmental, it's preliminary environmental linkages. It's like the pre-NEPA stage. It has a lot of community engagement, letting people know what we're doing. We're trying to get through a lot of things before we go to that NEPA. So that's happening now. I'll talk a little bit more about what things we're trying to get for that now, but we're not looking to toll that until we're thinking that's going to be done end of 24. So somewhere after that, we would start tolling. During this whole time, we've been using an Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee to help us as we're going through these NEPAs and making these policies and these decisions about how tolls affect people. So we have a whole group, our Equity and Mobility Advisory Group, they'll stay on throughout these NEPAs. And then the community stakeholder and travelers, that never stops. I mean, right now it's regarding NEPA and our environmental work, but when we do operations, it will be customer service. So this will always be there. Next slide, please. And as I said, we have EMAC up here, but it's the Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee. They were formed about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. And they represent people from Southwest Washington and over the metro region with lived or worked equity experience. So what they're tackling is, what things do we need to put in place to make tolls equitable? So they have their first recommendation going to the Oregon Transportation Commission in November. They'll come out with those and share them with the public, make sure that we're on the right track, but that's their charge. Next slide, please. As I said, we had some things to do regarding that regional mobility pricing project. And one of those things is called a purpose and need. We also have some alternatives analysis, but why are we doing it? What's the purpose and what's the need? And we're out asking for people to let us know what that is. So any comments you have regarding the purpose and need, we're taking those now. We're also doing what we're doing right here is presenting, letting you know what the projects are that we're doing and any information we need. We're having small group conversations about it. We also have something called community engagement liaisons. They go out into their communities in their native tongue and they talk about these projects just like I'm doing right now and garner back that information. And it actually feeds into not only the project team, but also the Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee. So that way we're taking information and we're trying to make sure that we can shape it to help shape the program. We'll also be having some regional fall workshops. You should see something about that in the next couple of weeks, where we're inviting everyone in to come and talk about these projects we're doing and garner information about how we could do it better or how we could do it more successful. Next slide, please. And then on the I-205, we're looking at impacts right now. As I said, we are already in a NEPA. We're in the environmental review process. So we are looking at, I talked about diversion. We're looking at those places that have that impact right now. We've asked that people send us in, what's the intersections? Where are the places? And we're actually digging into that data right now. If you want to, find out more about us, we do have a newsletter on all of these projects actually. And we're doing the same small group conversations. And we're out everywhere trying to talk about what's going on and making sure that we're getting your input back in. Next slide, please. And as I said, you can reach us. Here are different ways that you can reach out to us. And I'm going to turn it over to Brendan because I think this is maybe the last slide, Brendan.
Excuse me, I'll come off mute. It is. We can pull it back up, make sure everyone got that contact information. And again, I think a lot of information to digest there. Appreciate everyone's time. We obviously want to see if there's any questions, but also want to put it out there that if there are follow-ups that we need to do, we are available to be contacted by those mediums or filter them any way you like. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lucinda, Megan, and Brendan. That was a great presentation. And there's no questions as of yet. So if we get any in the next few days or next week, we can forward those on to you. And we appreciate your openness to help answer those. So thank you. I do want to thank, again, our sponsors, which is Columbia Bank, Portland General Electric, the Boeing Company, Gresham Barlow School District, and MetroEast Community Media. You won't want to miss next month's luncheon. If we can gather in person, our guest speaker for October is Gresham Mayor Travis Stovall, and we'll be up at Persimmon Country Club. Seats might be limited, so definitely watch our newsletter or go to our website to look for any updated information on that. And looks like, we have one question that popped in here. The question for you guys is, how will these toll roads just push congestion into the city?
I think that's a question about diversion, Lucinda, and I'll probably let you tackle that one because you've had to deal with that one quite a bit.
Not a problem.
I'll let you.
Not a problem. So as I said, there are two kinds of what we call diversion. There's the diversion of people who are rerouting because there is congestion. And then we kind of just lump it all together. And the person who's just going a mile down the road to go to the grocery store, we call that diversion also, although that is probably their correct trip. As we talked about doing the whole system, diversion's a little bit different. Diversion works in kind of small segments. If there's a toll in this 1 mile segment and I can go around, I'll do it. We're talking about tolling the whole thing. So the diversion piece will be more of, am I making this trip? Is this my correct trip to make? Less diversion when you're talking about doing a system because you're not going around the toll, which is what diversion would cause, right? Is to just go around the toll. In this case, we would be choosing to spend more time to get off the road to go around a toll road. So we're believing that diversion will be a little bit different. And I've seen in other places that diversion doesn't happen quite the way we all think. It's like, oh, it's priced, now I won't go on it. But no, if I can get a reliable trip, because my ideal of diverting is to get past the congestion, if I can get a reliable trip, then my money is worth it.
Wonderful. Thank you. No more questions, looks like. Nope. Well, thank you so much, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful week. Stay happy, healthy, and enjoy this beautiful sunshine. Thanks so much.
Thank
Everybody
you.
have a great day.
Likewise. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.